All right. Good day, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Haz Mat Guys. I'm Bobby Salveson, so let's get into it.
Welcome back, everybody, as we travel down this road of analyzing the situation and planning our problem. This is episode 45. We are the premier podcast dealing with hazardous materials response for the fire responder. We're going to give you the knowledge and the insight to do your job safely and effectively. I'm Michael Monaco. I'm glad to be here with my co-host, Bob the Hiker Salveson.
Yes, indeed. I just got back from a hike, and I'm being venturous. I'm taking my 8-year-old son on a 12-mile hike of the Appalachian Trail just to shake out one more time before I go to start at Springer Mountain in Georgia.
Do you have a backpack for him, or is he going to be with you the whole time?
I do. I have the backpack right over here on the side, and I put 10 pounds in it, and he's like, wow, this is heavy. And I'm like, I can't make it much lighter. I can't make it much lighter for you, baby. So I have a feeling I'm going to be a Sherpa for this one. But
yeah. You got to train him, though, because when you get old and decrepit, he'll be your Sherpa.
Exactly.
It goes both ways.
So we'll just get right into it. If you haven't already picked up your awesome swag from the show and help us donate or, listen, if this means anything to you, buy us a cup of coffee or a beer. On the right side of the hazmatguys.com, you'll see a PayPal button, and you can either buy us a coffee or something with that button, or go to the store that's on the website and buy a shirt or a very nice mug that seems to be very popular. They hold heat forever. I don't know.
Listen, if you're bigger than a large, you really need a shirt every day to cover up your body. There's no reason why you shouldn't walk around in a Haz Mat Guys shirt. And
you can get a super extra large. And I was gonna make a wife joke, but I can't do that. That was gonna be bad. Anyway.
Oh, all right. iTunes reviews, guys, put them in. We love them. We love to hear them. We love to see them. Although not really as important as it used to be. We got a ton of really good, happy reviews. So you can either put in the iTunes review or do one better and actually recommend this show to somebody and send it to them and be like, listen to these two jackasses. You'll enjoy a couple minutes.
Listen to the debauchery that we go across your ears. As far as upcoming shows, we seem to be in the middle of the whole, seminar consortium season. It's like everything's happening right around now. If you're listening to us, which is about, by the time you listen to this, is going to be about September 1st of 2016. Virginia's coming up. Pennsylvania just stopped, and I would like to thank Pennsylvania for their support of our show. They made us one of their title sponsors for media coverage, and hopefully next year we can be there with them. Boston, actually it's Plymouth, is the Massachusetts one, which we're going to be coming up. And what do you got with that one?
Oh, we actually, they have been kind enough to ask us to do a couple of different things. I'm going to be doing the oxidizer lecture that I almost burnt down the hotel last time. And wizardry, as somebody said. And you're going to be continuing with your media, correct?
I'm doing a media one.
And then we are going to be doing a tag team together in which we kind of go through scenarios that are made up on the spot by the audience. So it's going to be kind of like Hazmat meets Whose Line Is It Anyway meets Disaster.
Right. This could go either way. This could go any way. Right.
And I just want anyone who's going to go to this to know that we are doing this for the first time. We're practicing a little bit, but it's all going to come together at the show. So honestly, if you want to watch us crash and burn, this is the place to go do it, because it will be a phenomenal crash if it goes wrong.
Yeah, I think, well, you know what? I think we can tap dance on that landmine quite a bit and hopefully pull it out, but I don't know. And I'm also doing a fuel tank transfer presentation as well. So.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Doing 3. I don't know how the hell I'm gonna do it, but whatever. And
as long as it's not at the same time, you'll be good to go.
Yeah. And if you haven't heard about it, the Roundtable, we have another weekly show that we do on Tuesday nights, 21:15 hours Eastern Standard Time, again on a Google Hangout. And if you're not a fan of that, if you can +1 us on the Haz Mat Guys Nation, That is another show that we have that 4 or 5 of us, depending on the night, get together and we discuss current topics around the nation and just kind of armchair quarterback it, if you would, without being mean. I think I think we try to like put ourselves in their seats and how would we handle it, and we try to really not investigate anything about the scene, so that if we were in that seat and we had to go and see what the hell was going on, we were gonna be on our heels with that. So we try to do this a lot. It's a great show if you haven't listened to it. So without tooting our horns too much, but let's see. Mike has vacated his microphone. I can only dance for so long. Want to see some tricks? Watch this. Da, 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 da. A little magic here, Mike.
Sorry. We'll cut that out. But one of the savages had closed the door to the bathroom, which is where the dog's water is. So you were hearing a dog bark, and the little bastard wouldn't stop until I drowned him.
Well, I'm gonna take a mark and then start this.
All right.
All right. So we're gonna start the show, episode 45. Mike, bring us up to speed with what this topic is and why is it important to us in hazardous materials.
So this is actually a process that it's mentioned in 472, in NFPA 472, the standard, and they go through how we sit and evaluate a scene. So how we approach it, what our thought process should be, and it's almost like a step-by-step logical approach to hazmat. We've covered a huge chunk of analyzation, which if anyone has ever been in a hazmat scene, you know, analyzing what you have in front of you is often the most time-consuming of the steps, where you're taking in all the information, you're taking in the science of the product, you're taking in the scenario, everything that's around you. We talked about those on the prior 2 episodes, so I guess that would be, 43 and 44. We kind of went through that a lot, and now we're starting to get to the point that we are approaching the scene very intimately. We're getting close to the container, and we're going to start to do this kind of container evaluation to see what is going on and how the container and the product and the damage comes together to give us a bigger, broader picture.
All right. And just remember that, like, hazardous materials are only hazardous if they're out of their containers, right? If they're doing things that we don't design them to do. We deal with hazardous materials on a regular, constant basis. I mean, like filling up your car. We're very comfortable with some of these things, but when they start coming out of the containers and start doing things that we do not expect, that's where we start having problems.
Absolutely. And, a really good size up of your container is actually going to tell you a lot about what's going on, not just the type of product, but what kind of release you have, what is going to happen, the volume of product that you're referring to. So it's pretty substantial to do a proper size up.
Right. And when we're going to keep talking about examining the container, we're going to keep talking about it. In all reality, whether the container is huge or it's small, it really doesn't matter because it's damaged and we have to act accordingly. Of course, we're going to maybe ramp up some points of it, but it's damaged and we have to deal with it.
So this would probably be a pretty good time to start talking about the general hazardous materials behavior model.
That's exactly where I would start. Now as good as time as any.
Sweet. Yeah, plug that in right at the right spot. You like that?
I love it. So we know that containers don't just open themselves, right? There's a reason why they failed. It could have been operator error. It could have been overpressurization. It could have been anything. They don't spontaneously fail. We can look at what happened. And even when things seemingly spontaneously fail, there's something behind it. Like, and I'm just off the top of my head, I'm saying a corrosives container like a 312 has a leak in the bottom. Well, how do we know that on the inside, chemicals weren't reacting with the skins and corroding it? So that's kind of what we're saying. Something somewhere had to happen.
Right. Yeah, it just didn't magically, spontaneously start to leak. So, and it changes how we operate. It changes what we do and how we approach things. And if you can figure out what has happened to the container, you can really start to to put your operation into a bubble and figure out step by step what's going to happen, because you essentially know the reason it got out of its container and you can start to put it back in.
Right. And the stresses are basically going to land in three general categories. There's either going to be thermal, mechanical, or chemical. Right?
Right. Yeah. And there's going to be plenty of time to size up and identify your container and what you have. This is the part that you need to slow down and say, this is a hazmat call. Hopefully at this point the life safety is not an aspect, and we need to really kind of take our time and see what the problem is, because it may be something as simple as removing the stress from the container, or if I do try to remove the stress from the container, is it going to make it worse? For example, if I have something that's on fire, right, it's reasonable to say I want to put that fire out. But if I have a forklift through a I don't know, 1,000-gallon bulk container, a tote, it may not be worth it for me to go and pull that forklift out. That forklift may be actually plugging up most of the leak, right? So we really have to do this kind of step-by-step size up, and we do this stuff a lot, and we don't even think about it. But this is a real good step-by-step guide to make sure you don't miss anything.
All right. Well, the first one we're going to start with is thermal, which is basically heat and cold, right?
Yeah, and I got to tell you, it is amazing what temperatures can do to change the container. So think about it, right? Heat can start to soften plastics. It can start to soften metals. Once something is softened, it's completely lost its strength. And things that are under pressure, it gives them points of release, whether it's a container that is now broken from stress, or maybe the heat has created a pinhole or even a large opening. And even cylinders with compressed gases, as well as liquids, obviously, BLEVs are well known, they can catastrophically fail under something like heat.
Right.
We had this a couple of years ago. We had an ambulance fire, and the oxygen cylinder, it heated up so quickly that it wasn't able to, the pressure relief valve wasn't able to keep up on the pressure, and the cylinder weakened in the heat and ended up catastrophically failing. And you can actually, if you go to YouTube, you can YouTube FDNY ambulance fire, and you can see this happen. You can see the point that the container failed, and there's this huge flash from the oxygen. So we got a lot of stuff going on when we're talking about heat.
Right. And heat stresses can also create a pressure that could exceed the capacity of the container, even if it isn't damaged. So like Mike was saying, it could be a perfectly intact cylinder that's under enormous stress from the heat, from a fire, whatever it may be, overwhelming those pressure relief devices, and it goes boom. And even so, cold can do the opposite to the container, but on it's basically the same outcome. Cold can make the metal brittle, plastics brittle. And when I say brittle and weak, I mean that it can crack. This can compromise the integrity of the container. So you might have something that is something as simple as it's not properly on the shelf, and the weight of the edge of the shelf is putting more weight in the middle of the container as opposed to its normal 4 feet, or even the weight of the container against the feet can pierce the tank. So this can go a million different ways with this. Cryo, which is again cold, or heat, can have a huge difference on this tank.
Yeah, and then once we get past the thermal, I would probably say this next one is the most common cause of why we respond to accidents, and that's going to be the mechanical damage.
Right, and this is when one object physically interacts with another one, whether it's intended or not.
Yeah, this is going to be things like your punctures, your abrasions, your dents, your gouges, your tears, pretty much broken shit.
Right. It's going to be important to remember that a lot of the details about mechanical advantages, mechanical damages on the container can be assessed until you get in front of the container. So I might not know. And even so, like, you might look at a container and go, it's all right. But what's going on in the back? What's going on the bottom? What's going on the top? What's going on where I can't see?
Right. They had that overturned tractor trailer. What was that, 2 years ago? that they had like 100 gallons a minute leaking out into the soil, and you couldn't tell because the damage was on the underside and the dirt. So it wasn't until they started digging around a little bit that they realized that they had a massive leak on their hands.
Right, and that situation right there where it's a gasoline tanker, there's really no way to know that you have 100 gallons going out through the ground at all. It's a propane bobtail, and you get there and it looks seemingly has no leak in it, but it has a frost line. Where's the frost line come from? There's got to be a depressurization somewhere to give you this. And what we're saying is pick up these visual cues and utilize them. Stop putting them into the file cabinet.
Right. They're all those pieces of the puzzle that we talk about. And listen, we talk about things like gouges and dents and all this other crap. And while it's great to know the technical differences, because there's those people out there who'll be like, well, technically that's a dent and not a gouge, for whatever reason. Don't focus on that. Don't become one of those guys that memorizes the technical definitions of the dent and the gouge and the abrasion. What you should be doing is understanding how to stop or slow down the leak.
Right. Yeah, and even those, those guys get into the meat and potatoes of this thing because they really, not that they want to be, I don't think they really want to be swarmy and like look down their nose at you, but there are different levels of I don't know what the right word would be. Maybe alarm, where they would act a little quicker versus a little slower. But and personally, my thing is I treat each one like it's the worst.
Right.
And that way I'm always safe. And I don't really, my thing is to remove what the problem is, maybe by offloading whatever it might be, and then go back and handle it. And so while you're considering the forms of leak control to actually stop or slow down the leak, you also might be wanting to have like, a second train of thought to consider how to contain the leak. All right. And this can be an even better option than actually trying to stop the leak.
Right. Because there's a lot of different options out there when it comes to, catching product. Right. And if you think outside the box, just off the top of my head, you get a regular engine company with a tarp. Well, you got a couple 1,000-gallon pop-up pool right there because they got probably 4 or 5 inch hose lines and they have a tarp. So you can, fill that with water, fill the hose with water, create a boundary, lay your tarp down, and now they can start to collect.
Right.
And you can do this, all the way up the ladder. Everybody's got specialized gear somewhere, somehow that can hold something.
Right.
And then
4 portable ladders together on their ends and then putting a tarp in there. That's a deep pool you can make.
That is an incredibly deep pool, and you can maneuver it to be whatever shape you need to get underneath things. There's a lot of think outside the box stuff when it comes to collecting material. So, and you may want to do something like Bob's going to talk about the liquid transfers on his lecture. You can take the product and pump it back into the container. Maybe that is an option that you want to be thinking about until you get something there that's a little bit more substantial. But so mechanical becomes kind of a way of recognizing how bad the leak becomes. Another way that we get a lot of damage is through chemical damage. And again, there's a lot of different ways, believe it or not, that chemicals can interact and cause damage to the container.
Right. And rust is probably one of the most prevalent. All right. Rotting of the tank is a lot. What is rust? Why is it considered, why is it considered chemical damage? Because rust is iron oxide, right? It's oxidation of rust, of iron. What it does is it changes on a chemical level the metal from something that is malleable and is has, what do they call it? Ductile, that it can hold into something that is not. And what happens is it starts weeping through, and then eventually it just cracks and opens. So rusting is a huge problem we have in our line of work.
Yeah, we go to oil tanks in basements that are 50, 60 years old all the time that have just randomly, spontaneously started to leak. We've had propane tanks, rust. Propane tanks are sitting outside. Rust is one of the most damaging things to a propane tank, and probably the number one reason on a propane tank why we go is rust. But there's more out there than just rust. Corrosion of the tank could be due to the chemical that it's actually holding. Like you had said before, right? We get say a container that's supposed to hold an acid and a base, a lot of times they're going to be lined on the inside with something. That lining gets eaten away, wears away. Nothing is completely resistant to the chemicals that are out there. It just it takes a lot longer. Like stainless steel doesn't mean that it doesn't rust. It just means that it stains less.
Right. Right.
So right, it still can be impinged on by chemicals. So these are all things that we need to kind of work our way through.
Or even contamination of a chemical tank by another chemical. So if we start doing, and we don't want to get too deep in the weeds with the chemistry here, but if we start adding different chemicals together, we have what we know as a reaction, right? Reactions are going to be liberating either light or heat or whatever it might be, off-gassing certain things. So now by off-gassing, you're adding pressure to the vessel. By exothermic or even endothermic, you're changing the temperature of the vessel. By you can see how these things are all going to react. And we just recently had this where we had an overturned tanker, and we were offloading it to another tanker. And when they brought the, they called the vendor and they brought a tanker out there, and it wasn't compatible. And the guy's like, "What's the big deal? It just put it in the back." But if we put whatever we had on the ground into their vessel, we might have a reaction, and that's unacceptable to us. We can't, because we don't know if we're going to have an overpressurization of the new vessel.
Right.
So creating a bigger problem for us.
Yeah. I mean, you got to make sure that that crap's certified clean, or it was holding the same stuff previous.
Right.
All right. We talk about polymerizations. Everybody talks about polymerizations, whether you're an operations level guy, when you hear the polymerization when you open up the ERG, or you're a technician, and hopefully the word polymerization makes your little brown eye squeeze a little tight. It is something that is a chemical reaction that can fail your container. If you remove the inhibitor from that polymerization, you can create a reaction inside the vessel that could cause an explosive or a BLEVE or a deflagration of that container. That would be considered chemical.
Absolutely. And you know what the worst thing about the polymerization is, and it kind of scares me, even though it does, because once it goes, there is nothing I can do. So that one, I really kind of pause on those things, but I look, I'm like, oh God, here we go. Because it's really, and there's no clock. It's not like there's a clock outside saying, "Hey, listen, you got 34 more hours, and now it's going to go." You don't know if it's 30 minutes, 30 seconds, or 34 hours. It's kind of weird.
It's going, and it all depends on even the same chemical and two different tanks can go at two different times.
Right.
Just totally different circumstances.
Another one is an endothermic reaction. ENDO reaction would be cold, right? So if we have high heat expands and makes high pressures, well, then endo would contract and pull in, and certain vessels are not designed for being pulled in. So we could have an implosion, or a vacuum or whatever inside a vessel. Remember, some of these vessels are made to be going out, and they are not designed to go in. So that could be another problem that we have.
Like when you're working with a drum on the side of the road and you create a vacuum in it on purpose and it collapses on scene in front of everybody.
And you say, ta-da! Maybe not.
Not that hasn't. All right, that happened to me. Yeah. So sometimes good ideas go good and sometimes good ideas go bad. What can I tell you? Now remember, the chemical reactions don't have to just be inside the tank. All right, you can get chemicals that corrode the tank from the inside out. So if you have one thing leaking onto another, that could corrode the outside of the container and start to as a whole, causing some kind of a failure.
Right, and we tend to think of this as much more of a bulk storage, but it's the same thing holds true with things like spray bottles or aerosol cans, small packagings of carboys. It just would be for a larger tank, right? So having a good idea of what has happened to the container can help us predict what is going to happen with the material as it leaves the container.
Right, because the opening of the container really is going to have a direct relation to the stress that was put on the container.
Right. Exactly. That. Yeah. Right. And it makes sense in my head now. So although this model separates the release from the breach, I think it's almost kind of tied together. So let's talk about this in forms of what's happening to the container to how the release of the material is going.
Yeah, that I think I see where you're going with that, and I think meshing the two would probably be a pretty good idea. So if we talk about something like a rapid release, which
Mhm.
is just really a release of a pressure container
Okay.
or a container under pressure, like it just suddenly poof, everything's released.
Right. Could be like a solid, a liquid, gas. Well, it could be quite literally anything, right?
Yeah, anything.
And let's think
Plasma.
about what's that?
Plasma.
Oh my
Ooh.
goodness. And let's think about what's good. Okay. I see what you said there.
Yeah, it's the what?
Because, right.
It's
Okay.
the speaking program. I marked it.
And let's think about what could cause a rapid release since you have things like a puncture, a tear, a split, a crack. Depending on the location of the said puncture or tear or split or whatever, it can change how it's coming out and why.
So you mean like a release at the bottom of a tank could produce a tremendous amount of liquid, but that same wound at the top of the tank could release vapor or gas.
And to be honest, yeah, I want a vapor, right? You want a vapor
I want a vapor.
over a liquid because usually liquids have an expansion ratio, but vapors don't.
Right. And the liquid is going to turn into vapor anyway. So you end up with both.
So
So
if I have that possibility of having a liquid leak at the bottom or a vapor leak on the top, and I have this vessel, I'm going to first thing. Well, not first thing, but very early on my list is can I turn this thing over?
yeah, can I stop the liquid from coming out?
I stop liquid. Can I stop it or can I turn it over? So that's one of the things I could do. If the liquid can come out due to head pressure or pressure built up in the vapor pressure, can I release the vapor pressure to stop the liquid from coming out under pressure? Maybe just gravity feeding it. Or I know this is getting crazy, but can I throw a vacuum on the headspace to stop the liquid from coming out the bottom? Now, I want to give you a specific example. We did this, and I'm probably some people's heads are gonna spin around, but we had a leaking oil tank in the Northeast. We have oil tanks, and they're 275-gallon tanks. And we spoke about this once on the round table, and people actually in California were like, "You have a what?"
You have oil in your house? How many gallons do you store?
275. That's the minimum we store, and it's usually kept in a 275-gallon tank on the outside or the inside of the house. And these things are old. In New York City, these things are very, very old. So there's usually a seam that goes circumferentially. I like that word, right?
I do.
It goes around, and these things have like little stalactites that hang off it, and really old things. And this stalactite is quite literally holding the seam together. They look adorable, like you want to just flick them. But if you flick it, it opens up the hole
Done.
and everything comes out. So we went to this leak, and we saw these things and we're like, holy cow, don't touch them. So what we did was we put a shop vac. Now this is home heating oil, so it's not it's not flammable at normal house temperatures. So we threw a DeWalt shop vac on the fill pipe and pulled air out of the top space. Thereby, it was pulling air in the leak at the bottom, and we held it in check until we got all of our containment set up and everything was ready. And some people kind of shook their heads, but it worked.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of those where we're gonna move very slowly because if this thing fails,
Oofa.
oofa, you're in for a treat. All right, and the size of the damage that's done to the container is gonna let us know a lot for what we have to do. Because think about it, if I have a huge wound or a little wound, it's the difference between a trickle, a flow, or a catastrophic failure of the container.
Right. And this is important to observe because we're going to want to know whether we can even try to stop the leak or whether the damage control or even seeing control or product is going to be our very first step.
Yes. that pretty much wraps up this episode of the Haz Mat Guys. Thank you for taking a little bit of time to listen to us, and we hope that we not only entertained you, but gave you a little bit of information and knowledge.
You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at the Haz Mat Guys, and please take a moment to go to iTunes and put in a review of our unbelievable podcast, or you can call a new, it's not really new anymore, comment hotline at 843-628-1484. That's 843-6-THE-MAT.
And we are now recording this show live. So if you want to watch us do this show in drag, like us on Google Plus, and you'll get to see the show. You'll also be notified when it starts, and that's great if you want to follow it.
We're also looking forward to your feedback about information or interesting incidents you were a part of. So take a note and send it to us at feedback@thehazmatguys.com.
Remember, guys, don't just get onto the job, get into the job.
That was nice. Okay. I'm marking 3 times, going back to where the hell are we? Detonation. Yes.
That was like I felt that coming, and I was like, perfect.
Oh, that was good.
Perfect. All right.
Perfect.
I think we should do a little bit of a little something, few minutes.
Yeah, let's just go. You know what? I'm going to move. Hold on a second. I'm going to move this down a couple of ticks here. And let's open it up again. And let's just do second episode with the second closing. Let's try this instead of me editing everything together.
Alrighty.
So
what do you have to do? Just take out the space, right?
Where?
No, I mean for audio editing, you just kind of take out the space and cut it and done.
This is going to be so much easier us doing exactly this because we knew where we were going to go. All right, so you're going to open it up. I'm on the mark.
You're marking right now?
Yep.
All right. Go back up. Good day, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Haz Mat Guys. I'm Michael Monaco. Let's get into it.
Welcome back, everybody, to episode 46, and we are the premier podcast dealing with hazmat response for fire responders, where we give you the knowledge and insight to do our jobs safely and effectively. I am Bobby Salveson, and I'm glad to be here with my co-host, Mike Monaco.
Bob, do you know what's coming up soon?
My birthday.
In the Northeast, here in the Northeast. Yes, happy birthday, by the way.
No, I'm joking. It's not even close. What's coming up? School is starting. For the kids.
Yes, and with school starting, the leaves start to turn. And as the leaves start to turn, the weather gets colder. Yes. And there's no better way to keep yourself warm than with a Haz Mat Guy t-shirt, as well as drinking a nice hot cup of cocoa or coffee out of a Haz Mat Guy's mug.
You got to do it like standing in front of the window with both hands wrapped around the barrel of the coffee, like in all the commercials, like they're like shrugging their shoulders.
Right, just commercial getting filled with hazmat warmth as you listen to the show.
Good. Looking outside of like hazmat tanks leaking, explosions.
Oh, it's like comfort, just pure comfort.
It could be really, you know what? I could do a little commercial for that. That would be pretty funny.
But you know what'll keep you the warmest about drinking out of a Haz Mat Guy's mug and wearing a Haz Mat Guy shirt?
What's that?
You know that those proceeds have gone to help this show.
Get out.
I'm not even joking with you. The proceeds from that help run this show. So if you want to get that warm, fuzzy feeling, I highly recommend that you wear a Haz Mat Guy shirt.
Yeah, guys, we're only going to make it through about half. We ran out of money of this episode, so it might just trail off.
Yeah, some of the shirts are only the hazmat. We didn't have enough to finish guys.
Yeah, so. I'm rolling quarters over here while we're doing this episode so I can pay for the rent, but we'll make it through. If you got a minute and you like what we do, please go to iTunes, which I think you can easily get to now on our website, thehazmatguys.com. If you click on the iTunes link, should take you right to the page where you can just put a review in. It is, you know what? That is one of the worst things about iTunes, and I hate to get on the soapbox, but they make it so hard to do a review of a show when you're not an Apple person.
They want to make sure you're serious. They want to be like, yeah.
Not serious.
No.
They're a bunch of clowns.
My wife just got an Apple phone, and I haven't talked to her in a week and a half.
Good. See, I'm talking to her now. So, where are we going to be?
Oh, we got a show coming up in where's that? Plymouth, Massachusetts. We're going to be doing a couple of lectures there.
Plymouth Rock.
Yeah, Plymouth Rocks. What are you doing?
I am doing fuel transfers. I'm doing digital media, which is a how to do PowerPoints and make them live where people can kind of watch them with voiceovers and the whole thing where you can do your own PowerPoints without actually having to be in front of a class. It's a new thing. And me and you are going to blaze a new trail by doing Haz Mat Mad Libs, which is going to be, it could go either way. I think it can fall.
Either way, it's going to be fantastic because we are either going to burn in hell up on stage, failing miserably, or it's going to be a huge success and we're going to be rock stars overnight.
Yeah, they're going to be carrying us out on their shoulders, which is like normal. Like when we go to work, that's what we
Yeah. Oh, it's yeah. I don't even have to. You know, when the last time was I had to walk up a flight of stairs? They literally carry me up every time.
I haven't used shoes at work in years.
Yeah.
They just carry me everywhere. It's amazing. But it's gonna be great. I'd like to, say thank you to them, and we're gonna be going around and hopefully getting a little more exposure on the West Coast. We're looking for a little bit more of that. But what else we do during the week?
The round table.
Oh, that's a good time.
Oh, and I love the round table. And you should love the round table too. If you're listening to the show, really the round table is kind of a quick little synopsis of the things that have happened throughout the country, like hazmat related. And we try to Monday morning quarterback a little bit, but not in a bad way. Try to talk about what we may do given the very limited amount of information that we get from a news article. And we're starting to get, people reach out to us, be like, hey, I was on that run. I can give you some more information. So it's kind of where we're headed. It's a good thing. When is that? I forget when that is.
What, the Plymouth?
The round table.
Oh, that's Tuesday nights at 21:15 hours Eastern Standard Time, and you can +1 us. I think on both of the websites. You can do it on hazmatnation.com, which I highly recommend doing because they get so much information so quickly about stuff that's going on around the nation. I don't know how they do it.
I don't know how he does it either.
The guy works a full-time job. I don't know how he puts this stuff up as quickly as he does, but there's some great stuff that he puts up.
Maybe he makes some of it up.
I do. I write in all the time. I put in, I do. I put in all types of silly stuff. But,
so we were chatting a little bit about the whole APIE process, right? We were getting into examining the container, and I think we were talking about different ways a container can fail.
Yeah. So we're just going to continue down this road, and picking up from the last time, another type of release that we can have would be a detonation, right? Which is basically a rapid, violent ignition of the product. And again, the difference between a detonation and deflagration, let's not split the hairs. We're saying something that's going to overwhelmingly.
Right. It's going to go boom, whether it goes boom at 1,000 feet per second or 15,000 feet per second. It really doesn't matter when you're standing 5 feet from it. No. It doesn't. And if you think about this really, it corresponds with the disintegration of the container. All right. So not so much the reaction, but the actual shape of the container, because a container that's badly damaged, it can have almost like a detonation without the product actually exploding. And you need to. I lost my train of thought. Oh no, I covered everything. I confused myself. Okay, go ahead.
Right, and then really one step down from the detonation.
What the hell is that? All right, for everybody watching live, I'm going to tear down the fourth wall. I have been attempting to do this, do the show notes with the dragon, the voice, and the line it says is, and
let me say it.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to say it like I was real. And then really one step down from the detonation is Libya. Really violent ruptures. Libya. Wow.
I got a lot of work to do to learn dragon.
Gaddafi's behind everything now. All right. Can you fix that word so I can?
Yeah, sure. Let me figure out what this word is supposed to be. And then then really one step down from detonation is A. Can we do that? All right, easily.
All right.
I'm gonna mark.
That's crazy. All right. And then really one step down from detonation is a really violent rupture, right?
Yeah, and this is where the product releases really, really, really quickly. We're talking about the time frame of less than a second, probably in like the millisecond time frame.
And we can think about all the different scenarios that could lead to a violent rupture. Much too much for this show. We can go on forever about it.
Yeah, and I got to be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of thinking, okay, I just had this sudden violent release or detonation or something like that, because without having a concept of the size of the container, I can't have a good concept of the gravity of the situation. So if I have a 1 gallon container, detonate on me or have a disintegration and rapidly release, that's a huge difference than having like 1,000-gallon ammonia container that suddenly just disintegrates in front of me. So make sure that your size up of the container includes the size and volume that you're dealing with, because it could be really, really important.
Right. And well, you know what? Now's a good time. We'll start talking about how these things come together to give us an idea of what can be happening to the bar. That's good. I like that one too. All right. I had to fix that one. We're going to talk about what's happening at the bar.
Well, I finished my Yinling.
Ooh.
This break brought to you by Yinling.
People are going to watch this instead of the show.
All right. To give us an idea of what can be happening to the
container.
No idea. Sure. No idea. Because then the sentence reads on, so for example, where his father is going and how he is going to react in terms of the release. All right. Maybe Dragon doesn't make this any easier whatsoever. Now we're going to start talking about how things come together and to give us an idea of what can happen inside the container. So for example,
where his father is going to go.
Where his father's going to go. I have no idea. So for example, how far. Yes, that's what it's. For example, how far.
Oh, this might be the funniest thing. Oh, we got
how far it's going. There we go. That makes more sense.
You know what? You're hearing it first here, folks. If you're watching the live version, we're gonna have to do an episode with nothing but Dragon, and read it verbatim. That would be so funny. Oh my god! All right, I'm marking, and we're
marking as well.
Starting that. Now, start talking about how these things can come together to give us an idea of what can be happening inside the container. So, let's say, for example, how far it is, and how far it's going to go, and then how far it's going to react in terms of that release.
Right. So if you contemplate something like engulfment, all right, or dispersion, you'd have to think that you're dealing with a gas or a very high vapor pressure liquid, and this product is going to get out into the environment and spread very quickly. All right, and I just hold on.
I'm sorry. Ooh, excuse me.
All right. Okay. And if we have a gas that really wants to expand in volume, we kind of call this a cloud.
All right. And then from there, there's some stupid technical definitions that when you have a cloud and
plume?
A plum and a cone.
Yeah, no, a plume and a cone. The cone is right.
Okay.
It's the plume. And you want to, all right, you want to hear something bad? That wasn't, I corrected that. That's my way of spelling plume.
A plum. Okay. I love this. This has to make. I have to put this into the. All right. Okay. I'm walking it again.
Okay.
What the hell is the next line? Cohen has a linear.
Yeah, these are the definition, not Cohen, a cone. Holy crap. All right, I got to learn how to make dragon better.
Oh, this is great. I might have been laughing more at this one than the wives' tale one. Okay.
All right. All right.
Okay.
Go.
And from there, there's some stupid technical definitions that you have. You have like the cloud, you have a plume, you have a cone, right?
Yeah, and there's actual differences between these two. So, like, listen to how ridiculous this is, right? A plume is a cloud, all right, that with a specific product and has shape and buoyancy. The hell does that mean?
Well, that's something that everybody should know that. And a cone has a linear and radial dispersion that expands as it moves away from a point of release. You didn't know this? This is basic.
I don't think. Now, what if I'm describing something to a chief and he goes, "I would believe you, but I believe this plume is actually a cone."
Right. I'd be like, you're pedestrian.
I'd be devastated.
Right.
Oh yeah, seriously, guys, we're not making this stuff up. All right, people actually sit around creating different definitions about this crap, and don't ask me how the hell it makes any kind of difference whatsoever once something is released, whether you define it as a cloud or a cone or as a plume. Your guess is as good as mine.
And they do the same thing with liquids. We have differences between pools and streams, whatever.
Well, at least with a liquid, you can, you have something like pooling versus streaming. How do you change the tactics between a cone and a plume?
I don't know, but being able to use the mechanical damage of the breach in the release, as well as the chemical figures of the properties to predict what's going to happen to the products when it's released, is really the key that we're trying to get to here. Your tactics will be much different if you have a catastrophic release versus a small leak. And that's really the point we're trying to drive home with all this. This mumbo jumbo we're just talking about before is just mincing the facts. What we're really trying to do is just really get you to the point of deal with this in, I don't know, how do you want to sum this up?
In exactly what is in front of you, because don't forget, like, the same product, the same chemical with the same chemical physical properties, but a different release can have a completely different outlook or a completely different outcome on your operation, and it could totally change the number of resources that you have. Right. So this is why we contemplate all this, because there's so much more to hazmat than just what the chemical is and how it's going to react. It's all these pieces of the puzzle and predicting behavior and all of this.
Right, and this is because as a hazardous material is released from its container and performs any one of millions and millions of functions, whether it be a cloud or a plume or a stream, or eventually it's going to impinge on something that is going to cause damage, whether it be something physical property, maybe just one of us, maybe environment, maybe animals, whatever it might be, but it's going to contact something, because if it didn't, why would we care?
Right. I mean, right. I don't really care anyway, but why would somebody pay me to care?
Right.
Is really the question. Right.
Premium.
So, premium. All right. And the impingement, like Bob said, it could be life, it could be property. It's really, if you want to kind of put it into a bubble, it's going to be anything that's going to disrupt our life. Right? Whether it's, I don't know, what could be like a disrupt the life? Causes the electricity go out, or they had that chemical release in Virginia into the river. That really screwed up everybody's life for a long time because they were drinking out of water bottles for months.
Yeah, exactly. Or even the oil tanker that went in the Gulf. That just
the Horizon, the Deep Horizon rig. A lot of different possibilities.
Yeah, this model really breaks down how the hazardous material is going to impinge on the object, whether it's going to be short term, like let's say minutes or hours, medium term, like days or months, or even long term, meaning years or even decades.
Yeah, if we can take the information that we're gathering and use it to minimize how this product is going to affect the world around us, whether it's going to surround or impinge, we have done a tremendous service to our community.
Right. And knowing and understanding how long something is going to affect an area is going to change our tactics, which is really what we're here for. And it's good to affect how we treat people, whether we're going to evacuate or sheltering in place. And that, to be honest, is one of those things that I would not want to be the guy that calls the shots in that, because that is that damned if you do, damned if you don't. Shelter in
Yep.
place transport. That is a very hard call to make.
Yeah. Knowing, you take the combination of knowing the product and then knowing your area, and you can really start to get an idea of whether this is going to affect roadways, transportation hubs, electrical grids, any kind of infrastructure like that. It becomes hugely mind-boggling.
Right. And then finally, once we understand the volume that can be coming out or how it can be released, where it's going to go, and what's going to happen with it, well, couple that with what we know about the product and what kind of harm it can actually cause, we can actually make a pretty educated guess on our next step.
Right. And using this idea of harm, we can kind of define a little bit better what harm is. And it's anything from simple injuries and illnesses to death, as well as that infrastructure damage that we were talking about.
Right. And your injuries are things that can affect us in the short terms, like tripping and falling, the slip trip, the old ever-present workplace hazard of slip, trips, and falls, or getting caught. Maybe you're just rushing, to a minor burn that could put us in the hospital for a couple of days. Nothing big, whatever, versus an illness that can have adverse effects to our entire health or make it chronic. You can go into that whole, teratogen and all these things where we pass it down via DNA or
right, three-eyed children, and
like mine.
Yeah, well, yeah, but yours are cute with the three eyes. It's very asymmetrical, so
Well,
they're almost snuggly.
I try to sell them off. They're good.
Yeah, when your daughter looks up with those three eyes and she just kind of bats them, it's adorable.
I can't poke her in the eye easily.
No, you need a toe, 2 hands and a toe.
I don't know where you went with that. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, we just lost our spot. Here we go. Okay. And then we got death, which is pretty self-explanatory, right? If death is a problem, it means you die.
Right. And it won't be your problem anymore. Somebody else's problem. So we start to look at how hazardous materials can hurt us, and then we start considering the PPE.
Right. And hazardous materials is really no different than anything else hurting us, right? Somebody's going to turn around and let me start that over again. Hazardous materials is really no different than a lot of the other kind of crap that's out there. Somebody has taken the time, sat down, and broken down how a hazardous material can turn around and harm you. So we kind of got a list of between the chemical physical properties and reactions, how a hazmat can turn out and bite you in the ass.
Right. What is that called?
It is called, well, there's a bunch of different ones. The one that we're going to kind of concentrate on is going to be traceable.
All right. Well, we have thermal, which could be the hot or the cold. That's
right.
And then you have the R, which is radiation. And we're not talking about thermal radiation like fires.
Right. And then we have asphyxiation, which is basically the things that are around us that the atmosphere. Right. Mm-hmm. So it takes away the oxygen, or right, you had those are the simple asphyxiants, and then you could take it one step further to the chemical asphyxiants. Those are the ones that get into our body and prevent our body from using the available oxygen.
Right, and we can have chemical.
What would be an example of chemical?
What, a chemical hazard?
Yeah. How can chemically we get hurt?
Hydrofluoric acid. I come up.
Hydrofluoric acid.
I give you Fuji dust to the eyes.
Little ricin.
Little Mount Fuji.
Right. And then we've got biological. We have all those different, Zika, Ebola, botulism, all these different biological things that are out there that can turn around and hurt us.
Or even mechanical, right? Something that's
From
detonations or something, bullets or bombs or whatever it might be.
The good old fashioned explosions. When you said thermal, you had said the hot and the cold. How would the cold affect us thermally? I mean, as a firefighter, we're always thinking hot, but how would cold affect us?
Well, you can have something that's endothermic, right? So something that's maybe like liquid nitrogen, or something that is giving off so much pressure that it is going into that it has a frost line. And let's say I touch the cylinder and my fingers freeze to it.
Well, we have gear, right? Our bunker gear can protect us from hot. What about the cold?
No, not so good.
Not so good, right?
Actually, quite bad.
So definitely something that we got to keep in the back of our mind as well.
Yeah.
You don't go touching really cold stuff with your bunker gear. It won't end well for you.
No, it won't. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Haz Mat Guys. Thanks for taking a little bit of your day to listen to us and hopefully make your job a little bit easier.
You can take some time. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at the Haz Mat Guys. Take a moment, go to iTunes, put in a review if you can. Take some time and tell somebody about this broadcast and let them in on it. If you have any comments, or you just want to leave a rambling, 30-minute drunken text about your girlfriend, 843-628-1484. That's 843-6-THE-MAT.
And we are now recording the show and also producing a live unedited version on the show of YouTube every week. This is one of those ones you want to go find. So please find us on Google Plus and follow us, and you'll be notified when the show starts, if that's what you want. But this show was quite comical behind the scenes. You will not be hearing the comedy, or for the most part, on the on the edited podcast version.
Well, I hope some comedy makes the podcast.
I'm sure I'll weed some
a little bit. All right. Listen, we look forward to hearing your feedback. If you think something that we've said is a little off base, you want to argue with us, you want to add to it, this is the feedback that we want to hear. And also we want to hear the incidences that you were on. Tell us about what you did, lessons that you learned. Hey, I did this and I look like a complete idiot doing it. We want to know about it because I want to learn from you being a jackass.
Sounds good to me. Remember, guys, don't just get on the job. Get into the job. All right. Let's stop that broadcast.
Mark?
Are we stopping the broadcast? Of course we are.
I think so.